Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Testimony Thursdays. I'm your host, Dr. Jazz, physical therapist, child of God, author. Thank you all for listening and joining me. Today's episode is going to be so good because as the title, we talk about testimony. And I have some that I just want to show, and tell. It's not my testimony, but some people that I follow and who I love dearly. I don't even know these people, y'all, but we're going to get into it. But let me start off by talking about my morning, because I had a really good morning so far. I had one pediatric patient evaluation virtually, and today was my first day using the Peabody 3. So if you know anything about pediatrics, that is just like an assessment to kind of measure a child's ability, like functional ability with body control, running, balance, all of those things. And it actually went very well. Like, I was nervous about using it because I've only used the Peabody 2. So it was just a change, but I loved how it was so easy to score online. Like, I was able to do that within like 2 minutes. So I'm excited to continue to use that in the future. And then I have 4 home health patients scheduled today as well, geriatric patients. So a pretty light schedule, flexible, and yeah, I'm excited. But let's get into it. Let's start off with our scripture. So our scripture today is from Deuteronomy 8. Remember how the Lord your God led you through the wilderness for these 40 years, humbling you and testing you to prove your character and to find out whether or not you will obey his commands. So I always love reading that part in the Bible about how Moses was literally leading people out of slavery. And it was only supposed to take them like a couple days, and it took them 40 years. And I'm like, I always just feel like that's so powerful, because a lot of the things that, you know, we're trying to reach our goals in life, and sometimes we are like the hindrance, you know, so we get in our own way. And yeah, and even, you know, because Harriet Tubman was known as Moses as well, and she was literally leading like enslaved people out of slavery, and they were like, we want to go back to our masters, or, you know, there was just, she was like, I could have freed more people if they knew they were slaves. So I just feel like, you know, our mind is so powerful, and what we think and what we believe is like what's going to happen. But yeah, I think that's so interesting in the Bible. And even with that being said, talking about humility and just, you know, being led through trials and tribulations, I have to talk about Jamie Foxx. If you know me, you know I love Jamie Foxx. Oh my gosh, one of my favorite movies by Jamie Foxx is the one with him, Gabrielle Union, and Morris Chestnut. Why can't I think of the name? The movie when Gabrielle Union, when she was a physical therapist. Oh my gosh, let me see. I'm gonna have to look it up now because it's gonna bother me. Jamie Foxx movie with Gabrielle Union. Breaking All the Rules. So that's one of my favorite movies. And she was a physical therapist in that movie, but she was more so like a massage therapist. I was like, they could have had her doing more things. But that's my favorite movie with him. Like, it's so funny. It's cute. It's like a cute, cheesy, like romantic movie. But yeah, so check it out. But listen to his and watch his Netflix special when he talks about overcoming a stroke. Y'all, what? When I say I was bawling, I was crying. Like, it was just so good. And I feel like people need to hear about that, especially people who don't work like in the healthcare field, and people who haven't had like family members have strokes or like medical conditions like that, because you really get a different outlook on what people are going through in a different perspective. And for me, you know, I had both. I had family members have strokes. I work with people who have had strokes. So it's very humbling. And it's also, you know, important to make sure people maintain their dignity. And I feel like that's, you know, that's something I'm still working on. And, you know, I've gotten better with over time. But how Jamie Foxx, how he was talking about, you know, people had to help bathe him. And he was like, you know, he wasn't even aware at first. But once he became aware, he was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if I want people, you know, going all over my body and stuff like that. And same thing with, you know, how we work with patients. Like, sometimes we have to move their limbs. We have to, you know, try to encourage that muscle activation. And it's not always comfortable. It's not always, like looked at as good, like, because you're moving somebody and they might not be able to move their leg anymore, or at the time they're not able to do it, and it can be frustrating. So you have to have that balance of like being a physical therapist and also knowing that is somebody's body. And I will leave with Jamie Foxx because he said he was experiencing dizziness, and I think he was getting vestibular therapy, because when he talked about how he had to, the physical therapist, I think she was a physical therapist or occupational therapist, but y'all have to go listen to it. It's so funny. And he was talking about how her name was Holly, and how Holly was like basically like a drill sergeant. She was like, you getting up and you're about to do this therapy, because he didn't want to do therapy. He was like, I'm Jamie Foxx, I can't believe this happened to me. But he had she had him like close his eyes and like move his body, and so I think she was doing some type of vestibular therapy to address the dizziness. And I don't know much about vestibular therapy, just what I learned in school, but I heard it's really good, and you get really good results, obviously. But for Jamie Foxx, like, I'm just gonna talk about a couple points that stood out to me. I just love him so much. But when he talked about, when you dream about what you want to be in life, you don't dream tragedy. And I was like, oh my goodness. And he was just so resistant to like any type of therapy, any type of help. And, he said people were telling him like, you get a second chance. And he said, I don't want a second chance. What was wrong with my first chance? And I was like, Jamie Foxx. Because a lot of people feel like that. You go through certain things. And for me, I'm always like questioning, like, why does this person have this? Like, why did this child have to have this? I'm always thinking about different things and stuff, and God will often like correct me. He's like, that's not your position to know why, but I put you, on this earth to help people with those different conditions and things. And it's definitely beauty in the tragedy. And for Jamie Foxx, it's like now he's able to share his testimony, and he's like a living like miracle, and he's able to share what God has done for him. And he goes on, he talks about how like a stroke has like saved his life. And I think a lot of times people can look at different like health scares and different tragedies, and we're like, why did this happen? Like, what can be worse than getting a stroke? And if y'all haven't listened to Will Smith's book on Audible, go listen to it. Like, it's so good. It's one of my favorite books ever. Like, and I love Will Smith too. Like, oh my gosh. Y'all can never make me hate him. I don't care. I love him. And I remember he was telling a story about his mom, and his mom was in a country, I think it was Turkey. It was in some country overseas. And she ended up, like, she was traveling with her friends. They were going somewhere every year. And she ended up like falling and like breaking her ankle. And she had to leave the country immediately to go get surgery. So, like, he was like, what's going on? And his mom was confused and all these things. And like, as soon as she left, the country ended up having like an earthquake that killed so many people. And it's like those things, like, you don't think about, okay, this is happening to me to save me. And I know, like, on the previous episode, me and Alexis was talking about how everything works out for good for those who love God. And it's like, so we have to keep trusting it, and we have to keep putting that in our minds. And so yeah, and with Jamie Foxx, he talked about how he was kind of straying away from God and was, thinking of himself bigger than how he should be thinking of himself, and how the stroke really like saved his life. And I can think about times in my life too where things have happened where I didn't want that to happen, or I'm looking at things and I'm like, why this bad thing had to happen to me? And it's like, but now, like, where I'm at now, like as a 30-year-old, I'm like so thankful that I went through what I went through in life. And even like failing out of physical therapy school, like I wouldn't have wanted to, I mean, maybe I would have, I don't know, but now I'm more ignited to do like a podcast to, share my testimony through a book or talk about it on Instagram, me and a public speaker, all of those things I'm motivated to do now because of what I went through, and to be able to help people and inspire people. So yes, y'all need to go listen to that and watch that Netflix special if you haven't already. I watched it as soon as it came out. I was like, I have to see this. And the same thing too with Tabitha Brown. If y'all don't know who Tabitha Brown is, my auntie, I love her so much. But she's just, her book, Feeding the Soul, and I'm pretty sure I talked about this on a previous episode as well, but you can listen to her book on Audible, and she talked about how her mom had a diagnosis of ALS. And ALS, we already know the outcome of that. Like, you're eventually going to lose all function of your muscles. And I feel like for people, we don't think about, how our muscles help us cough, how our muscles help us defecate, how our muscles help us chew, like, breathe, like all of these things, we take for granted, like living in our bodies. So the way like she spoke about her mom and the way her mom spoke about her disease was like so graceful, so elegant. Like, she asked her mom, because she would record her mom and do like different like diary entries and stuff so she could, share her story with the world. And she asked her mom, like, when she was getting, towards the end of, her life and transitioning to heaven, she was asking her, like, if you could go back and take away this condition, would you do it? And her mom said no. She was like, she's thankful that God chose me. Like, no, I wouldn't change anything. And that book too, y'all, when I say crying, snotty nose crying, like crying. Yes, I was just so amazed by how she let God lead her and just showing God's love. And I was like so overwhelmed. Like, I felt like I knew Tabitha Brown's mom. And it's powerful. And I think it really does start with like our mind and like what we're thinking about. So this morning, like the scripture that I was reading was from Matthew, and it was talking about how the devil was like tempting Jesus. And when I read it, it's like what the devil was asking Jesus to do was not bad. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it was like, he was like, okay, if you're the son of God, turn these stones into bread. And to me, I'm like, bet, like, I'm not about to let you, not try to say I'm the son of God. Like, I am the son. Like, what are you talking about? So I feel like for me, I would have been like, okay, boom. But that's how you kind of get reeled in with different things, because now you're letting your pride get over like what God has for you. And I think that happens to us a lot. It's like we let pride overtake us, and it kind of just overshadows like what we're supposed to be doing in life. And yeah, so I think, starting with your choices, and you make choices based off like what you're thinking. So I feel like, for example, for my patients that I treat, like, I feel like my first year when I graduated physical therapy school, it was like rough. Like, I worked in an underserved area. I was working with kids who were under like foster care, and some of the children I worked with were born with different disabilities because of what happened in utero. So like fetal alcohol syndrome, or like they, the mom was using drugs like cocaine and fentanyl, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like this happened because of a choice. So to me, it was definitely emotionally draining, because a lot of the things that I was seeing, it's like this could have been preventable. So that was hard for me. But I wish, back then I would have, had more grace for myself and for people, because back then I was definitely like a totally different person. Like, I was like, don't have this person mom come in here to their therapy appointment. Like, I was definitely more like not give you buck. But it's just, if my mindset was different, and then like I get a chance to help people, because it kind of felt like I wasn't making like a big difference, because a lot of the children, like the patients that I was seeing, they would get better, or they would reach like their milestones, and just being able to grow and develop where they could live like a happy, functional life dependent on their support system. So I would go in a home, because I was working early intervention primarily in like school-based, outpatient, pediatrics as well. It was all kind of mixed together. But, I would go in a home and I would see a patient, and they were, they were making progress, but it wasn't as fast as another patient. And they had very similar like conditions, like birth history. Both of them were born like prematurely. Both of them, had to stay in the NICU for over 200 days. Like both of them like had died and was resuscitated. Like so many different things that they had in common. But like the main thing was that the support system at home. Did they come from a 2-parent home? Do they have like grandparents? Are they able to make their appointments? Like that really made a difference on their care. And I think, it's one of those things where it's like we want to control everybody. And we're like, well, if this person would just do this, everything would be better. Or if this person would, and I feel like now, even working in geriatrics, I'm getting to see things full circle. It's like so mind blowing where our parents like become our children. And I can see children getting so, irritated. Even with me, with my parents, I'm like, y'all know y'all supposed to be eating this or working out or doing, there's certain things where I'm like, you should be doing this, but you're not. And I talk about it in my book too, like how I kind of got anxiety because I'm like, in physical therapy school, you're learning about so many things and things that could be like preventable or reversible, like type 2 diabetes, like you can reverse that, And I come from a family that has like, everyone has type 2 diabetes, everyone has high cholesterol, high blood pressure. And I'm like, we can really change these things. And then you kind of get frustrated because you're putting on that cape and you're like, well, I'm going to come in and I'm going to save you and I'm going to change you and I'm going to do this and that. And it's like, you have to definitely start with yourself, like with everything. So working in geriatrics, I get patients that their children are like, well, I'm not helping them with their exercises because they're not going to do it anyway. As soon as you leave, they don't do anything and this and that. And I'm like, and of course you got to like, you don't want to step on anyone's toes, but it's like, it definitely starts with you. And we have the privilege to be able to like move our bodies and tell our bodies what to do, and it listens. Like we have that ability. And I feel like for people who don't, it can be difficult. And it's like, it's definitely a burden to us to say, okay, like this is what you need to do. You need to make sure you're doing it. But on the other side of that as well, it's like we need to be grateful and have gratitude that we are even in this position to help somebody. And like I said, like it's definitely easier said than done. And you get some patients like Jamie Foxx, where at first they don't want to work with you, they don't want to do anything, and it can get really complicated. And it's like you can't want something more than somebody else. Like only thing you can do is work on yourself. Like you can sit here and you can be the best physical therapist ever, but if somebody doesn't want to work with you, like you're not gonna make improvement. So for me, I pray for all of my patients by name because God don't recognize HIPAA. He already know y'all anyway. So, for me, I definitely pray. I'm like, fill them with the Holy Spirit. Let them be able to use their bodies. Let them live a happy, functional life, being able to praise your name. Let them be living miracles to show off your work. Like, I pray for everyone before I see them, because it's not me saving them. And I feel like that is something I needed to realize my first year of like physical therapy school. Like, I'm not here to save you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to, show you different strategies on how you can live a functional life. Like it's, back then it was 2021, but now, it's 2025. I tell all my patients, like, whatever you want to do, like you have the ability to do it. Like it's a way. And even for one of my patients now, she really wants to drive. Like she hasn't drove in like a couple years now. And I'm like, you could drive definitely, especially if you get your car to where you can use like the hand controls. Like we have that out there. And she's like, well, I don't want to use that. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that's fine. Like that's your choice. It might just take you longer. You might be sitting in the house all day if that's what you want to do, but there's a solution out here, and I feel like for people, it's like, it goes back to our mindset, but you can't want it more than somebody else wants it. Like you can only work on yourself, and once you work on yourself, you'll see everything around you start to change. And yeah, I just think that's powerful. That's something I was thinking about earlier, because it's just, we get so caught up in like what we're able to do, and we get mad. And it's like, why are you getting mad over something? Like, why are we so focused on the wrong things? And it reminds me too of the Bible when Jesus was resurrected and he came back to visit the disciples. And one of my favorite sayings is like, mind your business. Like, that's one of my favorite things to say, is like, definitely mind your business. Don't be in nobody else's business. And so when Jesus came back and Peter was like, they were all on the boat, and Peter was like, well, Jesus, if that's you, tell me to come out there. And Jesus said, bet, come walk on the water. And every time Peter was looking down in the water, he started sinking. And it's like, God didn't tell you to look around you. He didn't tell you to, none of that. He said, focus on me, focus on Jesus. And I feel like that's what we need to do. And even when Peter was like, I think it was Peter, when he was like, so what you gonna do to Judas that betrayed you? Like, because Judas basically was like, this is where Jesus is. Like, when he got crucified, he was like, this is where he is. This is where you can find him for like a piece of change. That the Bible said it wasn't even enough to buy like food for pigs. And Peter was like, so what you gonna do to him? And Jesus said, why does it matter to you if he lives or dies? And Peter was like, oh, he about to die. Like, he about to kill him. And Jesus said, I never said that. Like, I said, why does it matter to you? Like, and I felt that so much, So for us, I think, especially as healthcare workers, like a lot of times we can experience burnout and just taking things upon us that we don't got no business taking. Like, we need to focus on Jesus. We need to focus on making sure that, we're doing what we're taught. We already have the knowledge. And that's what I say too in my prayers. Like, before I go to work, I'm like, God, let me use the knowledge that you have given me to help somebody, and let me learn something new so that I can help somebody else. Now with that one, I'm starting to be a little bit more careful with that one, because I notice when I do pray that specific prayer, my day gets hard. And I'm like, Lord, I ain't asking now. Listen, I ain't trying to do all that. And I feel like it gets hard because that's when I'm learning something new. So when I say hard, I mean like, I might get a patient that has difficulty with transferring because they're paraplegic. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what am I going to do? And in my head, I'm like, okay, boom, we can do a sliding board transfer. We can do this and that. Forgot to tell you, the patient has anxiety because they fell so many times. So as soon as you try to sit them up, they're like this. And you're like, you need to sit up so we can get to this transfer. Like, you have to lean your body forward. Like, that's how your body's going to go in order to move from like the bed to the chair. So that challenges me and makes me think harder and makes me have to go do research. So then later, when something comes down the line, or if somebody messages me, or, a mentee or a family member, like a patient from a family member or something, it's like I already know the answer because I learned from that day. So, I feel like life is a learning experience, and I don't have all the answers to why, and God told me I'm not supposed to. And I have a whole list of questions of what I would ask God. I'm not going to share it because I know y'all going to judge me. But, I think just really focusing on him will relieve so much like anxiety, stress, like depression, because once we get consumed in our thoughts, and that's really what's it, like, the devil wants to plant a seed of like doubt in our thoughts. Like, and as soon as I start to think something like doubt, like I automatically combat it with like a scripture, and I'm so glad that God, finally led me to that ability, and I'm growing in like my spiritual journey, because I feel like now, like, I'm definitely ready to receive all of what God has for me. Like, when I first became a physical therapist, I don't think I was ready for all of that, especially like financially. Like, if I was making the money that I wanted to make in 2021, I probably would not have seen as many patients as I was seeing. And I think that's why God, is waiting to relieve me of my debt, because as soon as that hit, I'm in Fiji. Now I'm gone. And it's like, Jazz, you're supposed to work today. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to work? I'm going to see y'all in 2 months. But, and it's like, not that, because I definitely love working. I love my job. I love, treating patients, but I also love traveling and all that good stuff too. So I feel like I'm in, a season where I definitely like have to work. Like I want to eventually get to a season where I'm working because, I want to and I don't have to work to pay bills and stuff like that. And it's coming. But yeah, like the devil likes to plant seeds of doubt. Like even his first trick with like Adam and Eve, he's like, are you sure God told you not to eat from all of the trees? All of, like what's going on? You can't eat from this one? And Eve was like, oh, you know what? Actually, let me just see. Let me try it. And that's what happens. Like we get so caught up with different things that's not godly. And like I said, like it's not necessarily bad. Like when the devil was tempting Jesus, and then another thing, he was like, well, Jesus, if you the son of God, jump off this cliff and God is going to protect you. Because the devil knows the Bible as well as we do as well, And Jesus was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not about to sit here and test God because of you. And I feel like, that's how we need to be so quick with being able to like combat different things with the word. Because, especially as healthcare workers, as students, physical therapy students, we're going to hear certain things and we're going to go through certain things. And it's like, oh, well, that's it. Well, or like, let me be prideful and let me go through this and let me tell you how I'm gonna do this. So just being patient and being graceful. But yeah, I know that was a lot. I feel like I was talking about a lot of different subjects, but I had to get that off of my chest, definitely, like with Jamie Foxx. And so to end it, what is a test that I am currently going through that is going to lead to a testimony? Oh, I feel like for me, definitely, because it's the beginning of the year and I had so many goals. Like in the beginning of the year, we on fire. We about to do this, that, and then March comes around and it's like, well, maybe I can wait until next year. But this year, I definitely want to be devoted. Like, so far I know we only a couple days in the new year, but I am like reading my Bible every day, reading my devotions every day, praying every day. And I'm being more organized. Like I'm getting things done like ASAP. Like I'm not like, as far as like work, like I'm not trying to wait until the last minute to do things like how I usually do. And I know that's going to lead to a more powerful testimony of like just growing spiritually, growing in my, my work, and growing in ministry, and just overall, because once we build those like good, healthy habits, it's going to be hard to break those. And it makes you feel good. Like whatever we're doing, it's like, yes, we're doing it to showcase God, but it's for our betterment. Like even with fasting, like fasting has so many different benefits. And it's like, if we do that, that's going to help us all around. Like it's going to help us spiritually, physically, mentally, like with everything. Even with prayer, like if I'm praying, I don't have time to go on Instagram and scroll on a shade room and like get upset about a post they made, like, or a comment somebody says. I don't have time for them. I don't have time, if I'm praying in my car and somebody cuts me off, I don't have time to cuss them out because I'm praying. So a lot of the things, that we're doing is going to help us eventually and just help us grow and mold us. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And for y'all's homework, go watch Jamie Foxx Netflix special. Go listen to Will Smith's audible book on Audible called Will. And go listen to Tabitha Brown's Feeding the Soul audio book on Audible. So thank you all for joining for another episode of Testimony Thursdays. And I will see you all next week.